Hi, welcome to the 15th flashback episode. This is the first segment introducing some of the best artistic films. Before we dive into the film introductions, I want to make a small point. Artistic films don't belong to any particular genre. In fact, there isn't a genre by that name. I simply refer to them as artistic films in this segment. Most of the films in this segment are likely unsuitable for family viewing. As such, there won't be the usual evaluations in this segment. Instead, I'll only mention the director, main actors, and runtime at the end of each film description. Let's get started by introducing 10 of the best films in order of their release year.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes.
My husband.
King that shall be.
If we should fail.
We fail.
This classic tale follows a noble and brave lord who, despite the kindness and trust shown to him by his king, murders the king during a visit, spurred on by the witch's prophecy and his wife's persuasion. He seizes the throne but soon finds himself plagued by guilt and mental anguish. Meanwhile, loyalists of the former king rebel, putting his newly acquired rule in jeopardy. If you've seen this story before, now you can experience it anew through the lens of director Joel Cohen. With striking black and white cinematography, minimal dialogue, powerful performances, and a memorable score, this adaptation brings a fresh vision to the tale. Joel Cohen directed the film, Denzel Washington stars as Macbeth, and Frances McDormand plays Lady Macbeth, who also serves as one of the film's producers. The runtime is 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Meine Ruhe ist hin, mein Herz ist schwer. Meine Ruhe ist hin.
The next well-known tale is the story of Dr. Faustus, also referred to as the Faustus legend. It tells the story of a doctor and worldly man who, in exchange for selling his soul to Mephistopheles, the devil's emissary, gains supernatural powers, profound knowledge, and earthly pleasures, including the affection of a young, innocent woman. While the story conveys a clear moral lesson, it's interesting to note that Alexander Sokurov's relatively free adaptation doesn't draw from a single literary source. The most famous versions of the tale are Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus and Goethe's Faust, but the legend itself predates these works. In his adaptation, Sokurov emphasizes the materialistic undertones of the story, mirroring the darker aspects of the era in which it unfolds. Although none of us have first-hand experience of the medieval period, the film's hazy and evocative visuals offer a compelling cinematic interpretation of the story's themes. Directed by Alexander Sokurov, the film stars Johannes Seiler, Isolde Dishok, Hanna Shigola, and Anton Adasinsky, with a runtime of 2 hours and 14 minutes. Another film delves into the extremes of family isolation as a means of shielding loved ones from the perceived threats of modern society. In this story, the father, with his wife's reluctant complicity, raises their children in complete seclusion from the outside world. The children are unaware of life beyond their home, with their understanding of reality heavily distorted. Media is censored, and words are arbitrarily redefined. For example, they don't recognize an airplane and have been taught to view a cat as a dangerous, predatory creature they must bark at to ward off. To address his son's growing needs, the father arranges visits from an employee at his company. When these visits cease, the father adopts increasingly troubling measures. He enforces stricter isolation and controversially assigns one of his daughters to care for her brother's needs. All these restrictions exist because the father believes his children are not yet ready for a free social environment. So when will they be ready? According to their parents, only when they lose their canine teeth, a tooth that civilized humans no longer have, one that doesn't even exist to fall out. The film is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. It has a runtime of 1 hour and 37 minutes.
Dime tú qué puedo hacer, no me quieres ya, tu amor se llevó todo mi corazón y quedó llorando.
Mulholland Drive is like an extended dream, a nightmare, in fact, that reflects the life of a Hollywood actress named Diane. The story spans her arrival in Hollywood as a promising young talent to the point where her life spirals and she loses everything. For almost the first 2/3 of the film, Diane sees herself as Betty, a gifted young woman coming to Hollywood, where her talent is quickly recognized by producers and filmmakers. In this dream, Diane also reimagines her friend Camilla, who appears as Rita, and takes her in when she's in distress. In this altered reality, Diane projects her aspirations and visions, casting herself as an exceptionally talented actress while seeing Hollywood's powerful insiders as forces conspiring to block her path. At a point in the film, we return to Diane's grim reality, which occupies about the final third of the movie. This part of her life is just as bleak as the nightmare, filled with crises that drive her toward escapism and delusion. The narrative loops back on itself, ending at a point that connects back to the story's beginning, making the film's structure complex and its meaning challenging to interpret. Directed by David Lynch, Mulholland Drive stars Naomi Watts and Laura Herring, with a runtime of 2 hours and 26 minutes. A group of healthy individuals without any mental or psychological disorders forms a small community to mock social norms, and both the written and unwritten cultural rules of their society. This group includes people from various backgrounds, employees, teachers, doctors, and even a housewife, who temporarily step away from their usual lives and families to freely express their inner fool without fear of judgment. They perform these acts of foolishness only in front of strangers, ensuring that this behavior doesn't interfere with their private lives. They enjoy this playful rebellion, but eventually, the group's leader announces that they should bring this lifestyle back into their homes and into society. When they attempt to maintain this foolishness in front of their spouses, children, or in some cases, their patients, if they're teachers or doctors, it causes a rupture. This film, directed by Lars von Trier, runs for 1 hour and 54 minutes. Notably, it's the second film created as part of the Dogme 95 filmmaking movement, which was short-lived, and in my opinion, this is the best work to come from it.
We've met before, haven't we?
In the two-part story that follows, Farid is a saxophonist who, believing his wife has been unfaithful, murders her and is sentenced to death. However, in prison, Farid undergoes a transformation and begins living a new life. A life that, in many ways, is his dream. In the second half, a new character emerges, serving two purposes. First, to forget entirely the murder he committed, as though he is a different Farid, and second, to pursue the life he always desired but never achieved. In this imagined life, Farid can finally have success with his wife, or perhaps exact revenge on his unfaithful spouse. Ironically, he avenges his wife's betrayal by punishing a new love interest, portrayed by the same actress who played his wife in the first half of the film. When she cheats on him, it's as if he has symbolically avenged his wife's betrayal. Ultimately, much like Mulholland Drive, this film reaches a point where reality and dreams intersect, culminating in a nightmarish blend of the two. This technique, used by David Lynch, can make the film challenging for general audiences or viewers unfamiliar with cinematic symbolism. The story's climax features Farid engaging in a chase, returning to his former home, and communicating with his real self through an intercom. In that moment, the dreamlike Farid and his true self occupy the same time and space, separated by only a door. Directed by David Lynch, this film stars Bill Pullman, Balthazar Getty, and Patricia Arquette, with a runtime of 2 hours and 14 minutes.
Have some fun under the pier like we used to. Oops, I am sorry. Still, this isn't a library, it's a restaurant. They got people for that.
Albert Adam is a mobster and the owner of the restaurant Georgia. His wife, Georgia, is in a secret relationship with Michael, a bookworm and regular customer who often reads at his usual table. Albert, an abusive and debauched husband, frequently mistreats his wife, Georgia, and openly mocks customers, including Michael. This abusive behavior unintentionally facilitates Georgia and Michael's acquaintance, and they quickly become attracted to each other, finding ways to flirt discreetly in a corner of the restaurant. The restaurant's chef, Richard, is aware of the secret relationship and keeps a watchful eye on them. Over the course of a week, the story unfolds as Albert comes closer to discovering his wife's affair. By the end of the week, this tense situation is expected to culminate in a shocking and even grotesque conclusion. Directed by Peter Greenaway, stars Richard Boringer, Michael Gambon, Helen Mirren, Alan Howard, and Tim Roth. It has a runtime of 2 hours and is considered one of the rare examples of grotesque cinema.
So he goes out for swimming, track. He wears tennis shoes. Jeannie, you know what it is to be a promo man in a firm like mine, huh? I'll tell you.
The story of Faces opens with a short sequence featuring the film's production team in a screening room. The plot is as follows. Richard, with his friend and Ginny, a woman he meets at a club, spends a long night at Ginny's house, which occupies nearly the first 20 minutes of the film. Later, he returns home to his wife, Maria, with whom he spends a pleasant evening. In the morning, however, Richard informs Maria that he wants a divorce. Richard returns to Ginny's house, while Maria goes out with friends to the club. Richard spends the night with Ginny, while Maria brings home a handsome young man from the club. The next day, before Richard returns and finds Maria with her new companion, the story reaches an emotional breaking point. After a failed suicide attempt, Richard and Maria, exhausted from their conflicts, share a cigarette, and the film closes on this note. However, what cannot be conveyed in these few lines is the intense realism of the performances and the documentary-like quality of John Cassavetes' camera work. Filmed in grainy black and white, Faces captures raw emotions and silent moments in cinema verite style. Cassavetes' approach allows the actors to embody their characters with a sense of improvisation, almost as if they are expressing their own personal interpretations of the roles. The cast includes John Marley, Gina Rowlands, Cassavetes' wife, and Lynn Carlin. The film runs for 2 hours and 10 minutes. In a luxurious aristocratic hotel, a man approaches a woman, claiming they met last year in Marienbad and began a romantic relationship. He recalls that she had promised to meet him there again, a year later, so they could be together. However, the woman denies ever meeting him, suggesting he may have mistaken her for someone else or simply dreamed the entire encounter, as she insists she has never been to Marienbad at all. The film's core is its deliberate ambiguity, which weaves through every scene, making it impossible to discern whether each moment is a flashback, a figment of the man's imagination, or the present. This ultimately leads the viewer to question the very reality of the events in Marienbad. The film offers no clear answers, inviting us instead to revel in its exquisite staging and mise-en-scène that magnifies this uncertainty. This influential piece in French cinema history was directed by Alain Resnais and adapted from a work by Alain Robbe-Grillet. It has a runtime of 1 hour and 34 minutes. A samurai is murdered after his wife has been assaulted during a journey. Following the arrest of the alleged killer, 4 individuals recount their perspectives on the incident before a judge. The killer, the samurai's wife, a woodcutter who observed the scene from afar, and even the spirit of the samurai himself. Like the previous film, this one also uses ambiguity as a key narrative tool, but here it serves as a philosophical exploration. Director Akira Kurosawa, adapting a work by Ryunosuke Akutagawa, presents the ambiguity not just as an aesthetic choice, but as a meditation on subjective reality. Through each individual's perception and interpretation of a single event fixed in time, we encounter varying personal truths and fragmented perspectives, underscoring the elusive nature of objective reality. Directed by Akira Kurosawa, this film runs for 1 hour and 28 minutes. And finally, following the main films, here's a brief look at 10 additional films. The first film is Nymphomaniac, 2013, directed by Lars von Trier and divided into 2 parts. Charlotte Gainsbourg and Stellan Skarsgård star in this provocative work, though it may not be essential viewing. In my opinion, if you haven't seen it, you're not missing out. This is definitely not a film to watch in a family setting, especially with children or teens. Next is Antichrist, 2009, another von Trier film featuring Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg. Similar to Nymphomaniac, it's not among von Trier's most exceptional works and might be worth skipping, especially in a family environment. Inland Empire, 2006, directed by David Lynch and starring Laura Dern and Jeremy Irons, follows. Although complex, it may lack the appeal of Lynch's best films. If you're a Lynch fan and haven't seen it, however, it's worth a look. Following Inland Empire is Fire Walk with Me, 1992, also by Lynch, with a dark, enigmatic beauty on par with his best works. Blue Velvet, 1986, another Lynch masterpiece, stars Isabella Rossellini, Dennis Hopper, and Kyle MacLachlan, and stands as a truly captivating and complex film. Personally, I rank Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, and Lost Highway among Lynch's greatest, and they could easily belong to any must-watch list. Next, Manderlay, 2005, directed by Lars von Trier. This film is the second installment of a trilogy, though the third part was never completed. Dogville, 2003. It's recommended to watch this film as the first part of von Trier's trilogy. The Celebration, 1998, directed by Thomas Vinterberg. This is the first work of the Dogme 95 series and a must-watch in the trilogy. Eraserhead, 1977, made by David Lynch. This film is sure to captivate those interested in Lynch's unique cinematic style. Next, we have The Trip, 1967, directed by Roger Corman and starring Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper. This film dives into the experience of LSD, providing a unique snapshot of its era, though it's not particularly remarkable beyond that. Lastly, Shadows, 1959, the debut work of John Cassavetes, is noteworthy. While raw and experimental, it provides an early look at Cassavetes' cinematic style. Friends, that wraps up the first part of our journey through some of the best art films. 2 more parts remain, which I'll introduce later. You'll find the full list of titles in this segment, along with their release years in the description. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these films and any similar recommendations you may have. Stay well, and see you next time.
Arqueta.